What's up everyone, welcome to tutorial 2 of my coding series for Fivem scripts. So today we're going to learn about the difference between client scripts and server-side scripts. What's the difference between the client side and the server side? So first off, to get into it, I'm going to show you the resource.lua, the client script we have right here and stuff. We have the resource manifest version, which we went over last video, and then we have the client script that's defining which one it is, and then we have the server script. So basically there's two different things here. We have the server side, and that's from when I was testing something, but we have the client side right here, we have the server side right here. And the client script has a function that I got off of a Fivem form, so it makes our life easier. Basically, you just have this function to draw text on the screen instead of having to call this all the time. So then you could easily call this throughout your code, and you don't have to constantly do this every time. It's just repetitive. So usually as developers, we like to lessen our workload and have functions like this to make life a lot easier. Okay, so now we need to get into what the differences are between the server side and the client side. So the difference between the client side and server side is the client side runs on the client. So basically, this is just running on the client. So this can't really get like the other players in the server as much unless you loop through the players, whatever, the player list. That's how you get it, but this will only trigger events for the client. So the client will get events triggered here, but the server side has the server events. Basically, these are events that you can trigger from the client to the server, and then you could do network calls and stuff. This is basically where you would do the I don't know if you know Discord webhooks or anything like that, or let's say you get data from a website and you want to get it from a website, then bring it into the server. If you want to do that, the only way to do that is through the server side, because the server side can interact with the web. The client side can't, because the client side is running on the client. The client can't interact with the internet or anything like that. The only way to do that is by having them, like, they have to communicate between each other. So a way to do that is by using custom events. Basically, you pass an event to the client.lua, and then in the server.lua, you can trigger that event in the server.lua and pass things to the client. So then the client gets the information from the server, and then you can also do the other way around, and you could pass things from the client to the server, and the server to the client. You can basically pass between each other, and that's basically how information gets communicated between both sides of the script. So then you can make fully fledged scripts that work together, using the internet or whatever it is you're using. A lot of the case, what I have used the server.lua for with the web, side of things, is I'll send Discord webhooks to my Discord server, and basically this will perform an HTTP request, and it'll send a Discord webhook to the Discord server, and then it'll send a message in the Discord chat. And you can only do that through the server side. There's no way to do that on the client side. So basically, you would have to make an event in the client side. You trigger the server event in the server side, and then you send that over, and it sends it through the internet to the webhook. And basically, that's how you'd send those. But we want to learn how to make events, and we also want to learn how to handle them. So basically, we have a resource right here named Event Manager. That's what we're going to be making today. And then we have the server.lua, client.lua already created, the resource.lua, as we learned in the last video, how to set this all up. So I think what we want to start with is we want to learn how to make our own event. Or maybe, actually, no. We should learn how to catch an event first. So I think the event we want to catch, because this one's an easy one, is the player spawned event. So basically in the client.lua, so be in your client.lua, you want to add event handler. This is basically what you do for all events. You're going to always write an event handler. Then you're going to have a function for the event routine. Basically, this is what's going to be called whenever the event gets handled. This function's going to run. So we'll put function runs as a comment. And then player spawned. So basically, whenever the player spawns in the server, this function will run. And now what we want to also do is maybe we'll print this out to the client. So trigger event, And I think in our last video, we only did the server side. We didn't mess with the client at all. So the difference here is between the other video and this one is I'm messing with the client side right now. So I'm not doing trigger server event because the event that we triggered when we triggered it last time, we had triggered client event. We did trigger client event, chat message, then we did the source and we did the message. But the difference here is we're actually in the client now. So we don't have to trigger client event because we're in the client. It knows this already. So then we'll just put trigger event instead. And then we'll put chat message as usual. And then we'll put the just the message actually, because you don't have to put source. It knows the source already because the player's logging in. So then we'll put you just spawned. And then we'll put that like that. Save that. And I think I have these all saved now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it, move it over here, move it over to my scripts. And I think it's in here just to make sure. Okay, it's in here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do slash, well, we got to do refresh first because I just put it in. And there's a lot of resources that I haven't started clearly. And then we'll start it, right? And then if we die, respawn, it says you just spawned. It just printed that out. So we just handle that. So every time you die and respawn, that thing will print out a message to me. But what you should be aware of is this only prints out to me. It doesn't print out to anybody else because we triggered the event for the client. The chat message is only for the client. It's not going to print to anybody else. So this only gets sent to me. It doesn't get sent to anybody else when they spawn. Except if they spawn, it gets sent to them. But it only gets sent to the person who spawned in. Like, if I had another person on the server right now and I die and I respawn, this message is only going to be sent to me. They won't get this message. If that makes sense. I think I explained that thoroughly enough. But so now every time someone spawns, that's going to send the message. So now this is pretty basic. This is pretty simple. You know, this isn't really a big deal or whatever. But this is used in a lot of scripts and a lot of scripts. What they do is then they have something like this. They have like a global Boolean value, like already triggered equals false. And then what you do is you do something like if not already triggered. So if it wasn't already triggered, then you don't have to technically do this, but I like to, make it pretty. Then you do this, and then what you do is actually already triggered, and you put equals true, because you don't want this to run again. Then this will only run one time. So when I restart this, when I put it in first, because I still have to put it over there. So we'll take this, put this in here. Okay, then we'll just restart it. Event manager. Okay, now if we slash die and slash respawn, but if we do it again, it doesn't run again. It only runs once because we already triggered it. So a good thing what this is used for is usually like when a person first logs in, because when you first log in, you actually spawn in. So the spawn event gets called when you first log in. So a lot of scripts, they use that for when they just want to trigger something once. So this is like good for if you're setting up variables and stuff like that. You're creating a table and putting players into it. You don't want to add the player 4 times or something because they respawned every time. You just want to add them once, the first time they get into the server and spawn. So that's what that would be used for. But now what we want to learn to do from this is we now know how to handle an event. And you can find the events on the Fivem forum, so I'll link that down below. But you can then handle events by just doing add event handler, having the event name here, like player spawned, and then the function. There's parameters you could put here too, like the spawn location and stuff like that. It depends on the event, which you'll have to check the Fivem forum documentation for to like figure out what parameters there are and you could use for, your own purpose, whatever you need it for, because sometimes you may want to, get where the location is they're spawning or something. So that could actually be a parameter where you could put like spawn location here and stuff, but you don't have to have it. If you don't need it, then, don't put it. But we want to learn how to make our own events now. So actually, what we're going to do is register net event, and then usually you put the resource name. That's good practice. And then I usually like to put client, and then I guess what we'll do here maybe is I need something that we could basically set, I guess maybe true or false or something. So what we could do is I'll just show you a command in the server side we run, then it triggers the client side and it sets a variable to something. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Event manager client, trigger, basic event maybe. And then we're going to do this, add event handler, as we learned above. And then we're going to take this, copy and paste this, because I don't want to mess up the naming. Just put that there. That's handling the event we just created. Register net event. We just registered an event. Then function. Now here's the thing. Inside of this, we can put what we do for the things like this when you handle the event and it has parameters. The parameters get passed, but it's optional if you use them or not. So what we could do here is we could put it value like that, and then basically something could get passed here. So now what we're going to do is actually trigger event, if I can type, and then we're going to put chat message, and then we're going to print the event in the client got triggered. So now the event gets client gets triggered when we call this event. So now we have to learn, how do we call this event? We just registered it. We just added the event handler for it like we learned above. This is how this gets handled. So every time that this thing gets called, this function's going to run, and then it's going to print out, our statement that the event in the client got triggered. So now we want to go to the server because we want to trigger it, So we're going to do we're going to make a command. We did this in the last video, so this you should know how to do. We're going to make it trigger. And then we're going to do function. It's source. I can't think right now. Okay. Then we're going to put raw command. If I can type today again. Alright. And then we're going to put that. Okay, so now we have trigger. So this will be /trigger. This will just trigger the event. So now the way we want to trigger it is trigger. And you should probably be able to guess what we're going to put here, but we're going to put trigger client event, and then we're going to take that name that we had here, trigger basic event, or the whole thing, because that's what we have to put there. Paste it right here, okay. And the player ID, which is our source, like we learned in the last video, and then the value. Technically, we don't need to put anything here now because we're not doing anything with it, but we'll put true just to show what it does, right? And then the value is now going to be true. So now we want to know what the value is. So just to simplify things, we're just going to print the chat message. And we're just going to print the value, what the value is. And then we're going to put the concatenation symbol, the dot dot. You don't have to put semicolons. I just do it because habit. And okay, now we're going to take this, we're going to put it into our test server, copy, paste, and now /restart, or actually I think I have it up here. Okay, and then /trigger, the event in the client got triggered. However, our value didn't print out. And the reason for that is because there's an error, because you can't print a boolean with a string. I actually wanted that to happen so I could show you this. So basically, the value we passed was a boolean. You see, true or false is a boolean. If we pass false or something, that's a boolean value. So it won't print that. It won't concatenate that because it's a boolean. So what we could do is we could put toString. Basically, this will turn the boolean value into a string, so then it can be concatenated to the original message, and then it will print that it's true. So then we'll do this, /trigger, and the value is true, because we made it a string, and then it printed that out. So the client event just got triggered, and then every time I trigger it, just basically does that. So now the thing is, how do we now make a server event? Well, Actually, it's pretty easy once you know how to do events. So you would just actually, you could take this code and you could actually do basically the opposite of what we just did. And then we could do this, but we can't have it the same name. You know, that's got to be different. So we'll put server instead of client. Okay, and then we'll do that. So now this will print out instead of the value. Well, I mean, we'll pass it through the client this time. So we're actually going to take the same exact code, except we're going to change a few things to it. So this gets changed. Okay, and then we have to trigger client event because now we're in the server. So now we have to call the client event. We can't call, you know, just trigger event because that's not an event. It has to be the client. Now we also have to pass in the source because the source, you know, it doesn't know that which is the source. We have to pass it in when we send it from the server side. So now we have all this right. This is correct, okay? And then we're gonna make this now. We're just gonna take it actually. You know what? Because you can't have this. Or no, we'll keep it there. You know what? Indecisive today. So we're gonna keep it there. Then we're gonna put this here, and we're gonna put trigger client, I guess. Okay, that's what the name will be. And then we gotta change this to server because this is changed. So now basically instead of you know putting /trigger, we're gonna put /trigger client. And this command is registered in the client side. Now this doesn't change anything. If you register a command on the client side or the server side, it doesn't matter. It still works. However, the difference is the client side has, you know, a different way of interacting with things. So when we trigger a chat message for the one player, we have to do trigger event and just instead of client event because we're already in the client. It knows that, and it knows who the person is we're speaking to. There's only one client that's running this script. However, the difference with putting this in the client side instead of the server side is this makes it a lot more tougher to print out a public message because the only way to print out a public message would have to be looping through all the players, which is really unnecessary because you could just go in the server and instead just put -1 instead of source. So it doesn't really make sense to do here. So what we'll actually do with this now is actually we're going to print it to everybody by running this in the client. So trigger client event source, we pass the source, and then we pass true the value. And we're going to put, instead of source here, -1. This will print to everybody in the server. Now clearly I can't show you this because I don't have an alt. If anyone wants to donate, you know. This is going to send it to everybody in the server instead of just the one person who triggers the event. So we're going to take this, we're going to take it from the downloads, and then we're going to copy it over, and then /restart. And someone joined my test server, so say hi to Dallas. And then we're going to restart this. And if I do /trigger client, we got an error because I put trigger. I forgot to change something. And the thing we forgot to change is, look, trigger client event. We're already in the client. It already knows that. This should be server event because we're triggering the server event now. So we'll change that up, okay? And then we'll go here. We'll take this, copy, paste, okay? And we're going to restart it. And then if we do this, the event in the client got triggered. The value is 0. The value is 0 though. Reason being is where is it printed out? Value is 0 because in the server side we passed it from the client side to the server side, and it changed it from zero. What was it? Look, it changed it from true to 0. It's actually odd. Never encountered that, but hold on. Okay. That's normal, I guess. It changed true to 0. But I think that's because I triggered it wrong. Hold on. Oh, you know why? Instead of the source, we don't put source there. The source is the player. It already knows who it is. We don't have to pass the source here. It already knows who that is. So then if we take this, and we put this right here, now it's going to say true, because we were passing the source. So my ID is 0 to the client. The client is different in the way it tracks IDs. It tracks it from like 0 to, depending on the server slots. It doesn't actually use the IDs that are on the server side. It's actually a little weird how it works, but it all communicates together, like I said. So basically that's how you create the custom events. We now took the command that was in the server side and we brought it over to the client side. However, we had to change a few things to make it, trigger it and stuff like that. But this is basically how you make custom events. And this is how the events communicate with each other and stuff. This is why add event handler player spawned. Usually what you'll see is, you could trigger the server event here. You could take this and then you could just put this here. So we could do that, and then we could just take it from here and we could put it over here. So hold on, we'll put this right over here. And then what will happen is when we respawn, it's going to trigger that event. So /die/respawn. And then the event in the client got triggered. The value is true. But that's basically how you create the custom events. That's how you pass them to the server, and you pass the different information to each other. Because we took the client's data right there, we took true, and we passed it over to the server. And then we took the server, and we took /trigger, and we passed this value over to the client. Now, theoretically, we basically passed a irrelevant value. We just passed a true or false value. You could just, do that in the client or whatever it is. You don't have to, it doesn't make sense to pass that. This would only make sense if you're actually passing something that has to go through the server or something that has to go through the client side. But what I want to show you now is, I want to show you a way that you can make it draw something on the screen and stay there though. So there's this thing called a thread. Citizen.createThread function end. And then what you want to do is you want to do while true do. So we're going to do a while loop here. So basically this creates a thread, and this thread just keeps running because we have a while loop in it. While it's true, it just keeps going, so it won't stop. But we also need to have something in here. So we have to have a wait 0. Basically wait 0 milliseconds. So this will run every millisecond basically. And then we're going to do draw text to. And then we're actually going to take what we learned from the events, and we're actually going to pass something to this based off of what they type in a command to make it a little more advanced, so you can, understand how to do this, so you could make it on your server. So we're going to draw text, and we're going to actually have a value up here. So we're going to have server value equals default. That'll be default, so that when we start, it's just going to be default. So we're going to have server value. The X will put, I guess, maybe 0.5. And then we'll put, I guess, 0.5 as well. So it should be dead middle screen. Okay, so now we have this set up. This basically going to draw the text every millisecond, so it'll always be there. So now we want to get the server value. So we want to trigger that. So the way we're going to do this is actually use our old event right here. Instead of the value being nothing, we're actually going to set it to something. So we're going to put server value, and now this is passing the value from the server to our client event. So it's going to pass it to the client event. Our client event's going to handle it. As you see, the add event handler, this will handle the event. And then we're going to put the server value equals to the value. So we're going to pass it from the server, and then it's going to come to the client, it's going to set this value up, then it's going to change the text on the screen. So now we have trigger up here. Instead of this, we're just going to make it simple. So if args, length of args, the length of the arguments equal to 1, because we want to have one value. That's where we're going to set the thing to. So then we're going to do this, then, and then otherwise we'll have a statement that says, you know, it needs to have one argument or something. So we'll put trigger client event, chat message, and then source, and then we'll put error. You must have one argument. Okay, and then for the value, we're going to make this args1. So it has to have something here. So now we're going to go and take our file, or our resource I should say. We're going to restart it. Now you see default, it's right on the screen right there. So now we're going to actually type /trigger, I think it is. You must have one argument. We'll make it badger. Now it changes the text on the screen. Yep. So this could be used for a lot of different things. You could, I mean, mostly you probably wouldn't have someone changing it. You could, you know, doesn't make sense to do that, but you could use this for like an AOP script. Like you see how they have the things down there, the postals and stuff like that. That's how they print the text on the screen, and then they set the X and Y values, and the X is basically the horizontal value. So that's going to be the value of, if you think about a graph, the X and Y. The Y is the vertical position, and then the X is the horizontal position. So basically the higher the value is, the more to the right it goes, and then the higher the value is for the Y, the lower it goes, or it's higher. It depends on the script, but for this case, I'm pretty sure this one goes, if it's a higher value, it goes down less. It starts at the top. But that's basically how you would implement that into a script. You would basically just have the custom events, you know, basically communicating with each other, and then you could pass things on to each other by doing that. And then, I mean, now we have a script that basically just sends text and puts it on the screen for us by communicating with each other. But yeah, that's about it for this video. If you need more help with the threads, I'm probably going to go over that more next video. I just wanted to show it off a little bit because I thought it was necessary to kind of see the concepts in actual like work, because in a real script you would probably use a thread and stuff, and then data is getting passed between the server by using values that are global right here, and then you set the global value from the server that's getting passed to the client through an event. So I just wanted to show that off a little bit. But you don't really have to worry about this for right now, because you just wanted to learn how to do the events, then this is all you need to learn. You just need to learn this. But for more advanced scripts, threads are a big thing you're going to use all the time, because they basically run the whole time. So they're for advanced scripts where you're going to want to use this. But we'll go over that more next video. But I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, let me know what I could do better for the future. Making these videos, sometimes I get nervous, so sometimes I repeat myself quite a bit, but for the most part, I just want you to grasp the concepts of all of it, so I may go a little overboard sometimes. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it.